Back with Brian Hayes. And Hayes, it's time for a little bit of a trade center temperature check, specifically focused around the Leafs and Bruins. The Buds lost 2 games in 4 days to Boston. It's looking like a first-round playoff matchup between these two teams. We obviously know it is a rivalry for the ages.
Yeah.
So look into your future predictions right now. What do you have in this series?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you call it a rivalry, which it is in terms of the intensity when they play, Lindsay, but usually a rivalry, it's got to be a two-way street.
Good point.
You know,
right now it's leaning Boston.
It is. I mean, you look at what happened in 13, what happened in 18, 19, this year, this week. You know, it's kind of like the Battle of Ontario, where in this case, the Leafs are playing the role of the Ottawa Senators and the Bruins are playing the role of the Maple Leafs back in the Battle of Ontario, late 90s, early 2000s. So it's difficult to envision how the Maple Leafs are going to break through because Boston, A, has their number. Boston's a very good team. Boston's got better goaltending. I think they've got better defense. So the Bruins are going to be favored, right? The Bruins, I think, basically the Bruins, unless they play Florida in the first round, which isn't going to happen, it's not possible based on where they're both going, they might be favorites against every team in the East. So it's not a massive, disparity. It's not like the Leafs are massive underdogs or anything like that. But the Leafs have to find a way to break through here. And it's going to start with their best players. And what we saw this week was their best players were not up for the task. Now, it's the regular season. That doesn't matter nearly as much as it clearly is going to matter in about a month and a half if and when these two teams play in the first round. But it can't be Pasternak lighting it up, Marchand lighting it up, and Matthews and Marner are looking around saying, when are we going to contribute here? You have to be led by your best players, and in the past, that has not been the case against the Bruins. So it's probably a crash course. I can tell you that Leaf fans, it's the last team they want to see. Leaf fans are going to try to build it up, right? Like, oh, you got to go through the Bruins. Why not knock that down?
Yeah.
Last year, they finally won a playoff series against Tampa. This is the year you get past the Bruins, and they very well could do that. They're a good team. Leafs are a good team. But I think most Leaf fans in the back of their minds, they're like, could it not be Florida? Could it not be the Rangers? I think you'd rather play Tampa. But it doesn't really matter what you want if you're a Leaf fan. It's probably moving towards Leafs Bruins in the first round.
Okay, but you mentioned 2013, 2018, 2019. All those series win 7 games. If it is Boston and the Leafs, how many games is it going? Full 7 again?
Probably 7 again.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the history would suggest
going for the Bruins.
Probably leaning towards the Bruins. Right. Again, I don't think it's like a massive disparity. And if you get to a Game 7, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Right? Anything can happen. But when the Leafs finally broke through, it was Game 6. They broke through in a Game 6 last year. So at some point, they're going to have to do that. It feels like we've been talking about it for 20 years because we have. They have not won a Game 7 in about 20 years. So at some point, that's going to happen. But the Leafs do not have an issue, generally speaking, early in a round. Generally, they're pretty comfortable. They win games. They'll push the Bruins. My guess would be it'll go back to Boston for Game 7, just like it did in 2013, just like it did in 2018, just like it did in 2019. That point, probably the Bruins will be favored, but it's on the Leafs to prove that their history is just that, and they're going to start rewriting it moving forward.
All right, well, you mentioned it is just regular season games, but Boston has won all 4 of them over the Leafs this year, and we'll see what happens if it does become a playoff battle, and maybe if it goes a full 7 yet again.
Yeah.